Lately, it seems like everyone's got a problem with every movie and show. Whether it's a legitimate one, an immature one, a thoughtless one, a biased one, some weird combination of all the above, or having a problem simply for the sake of having a problem. And out of all these shows that people have problems with, the talk of the town seems to be surrounding Marvel's newest Disney Plus series, She-Hulk. The controversy of the conversation has been revolving around a couple of things, and though I don't mean to throw my 2 cents in like it makes much of a difference here, well, I'm gonna do it anyway. Mostly because I love dissecting this stuff, but also because it's a bit frustrating to hear concerns coming from places purely of emotion as opposed to logic when simply trying to break down a subtle moment or a quick scene or an entire episode. My brutally honest opinion is that this series is not off to a strong start. Now, that in no way is a judgment to the project as a whole, and I'll be as quick as I can to say that I really want this show to turn my opinion around when it's all said and done. With that being said, there are a few things that are difficult to look past here, and I just wanted to attempt to potentially shine a different perspective on the matter instead of simply saying, "Why the MCU make woman good and man bad?" First things first, why the change to the origin? I can respect when the cinematic universe attempts to take its own path instead of feeling obligated to always and only go by the comics, but only when that attempt is to provide a fresh, unique, and creative twist on what we're already familiar with. And this wasn't. Let's compare. She-Hulk's origin in the comics deals with Jennifer Walters barely surviving a gunshot while Bruce is there visiting her. After fending off the attackers, he took Jen and broke into a doctor's office to medically treat her. Having little to no supplies around and realizing time wasn't on their side, Bruce acknowledged that a blood transfusion was the only way to save his cousin. In doing so, she survived, but as a side effect became her own version of a Hulk. The main difference being her ability to somehow retain her intelligence and personality when transformed. For the show, this would have been perfect. As the comics provided Jen with a bit of an easier transition in adjusting to her powers, this series could have introduced the compelling dynamic of a family member being forced to make quite the emotional decision. Let your cousin die, or save her using a method you know will change the course of her life forever. On the opposite side of that, an element to make the audience feel for the main character more could be to show them as strong, yet vulnerable. Trusting but hesitant as she comes to terms with being grateful that someone was there for her in what could have been her final moments, but now having to live with a drastic change to her livelihood. I'm down to see that journey, but what did they give us instead? A car crash where some of Bruce's blood just happens to kinda sorta fall into Jen's open wound and then she just immediately becomes She-Hulk. Do I really need to point out the difference here? What on earth could possibly possess someone in the writer's room to believe what they gave us is an improvement on the already well-executed origin it derives from? And even the treatment of the car accident itself in the aftermath felt so bizarre. It's brushed off as if it wasn't a big deal, and don't worry, because the show will get back to it later. Wouldn't it be sensible that Jen would want to get down to the root of what caused this accident? And why is Bruce so blasé about it as well? I'd be lying if I said it doesn't come off as feeling lazy, and I'm utterly lost as to their decision on that one. Second, why the heavy-handed, "I'm so betterer than you"? A comment like this here and there is actually more than fitting given the playful banter that can come along with a cousin rivalry, but holy shit, this first episode really just can't get enough at this point. Why can she retain her personality while in Hulk form? 'Cause she's betterer. Why did her blood help Bruce's arm heal? Because she's betterer. Why does she apparently need no training, assistance, direction, or even general advice from the only other person on Earth who's gone what she's going through? Because she's betterer. And how do we know as the audience she's betterer? Because the script repeatedly beats it over our heads and tries to distract us from bad writing and just hope we laugh at the funnies.
I thought it was about getting my butt tight as hell. Up top.
Gross, Jen, I'm your cousin. Just close your eyes and breathe, alright?
One scene stands tall above the rest in this regard for me though, and that's when she takes a quick little moment to lecture Bruce on anger, how she's already a trained expert in the field of controlling it, and needs no advice from puny Banner, and that's the moment I cringed the most. Now hear me out, because I acknowledge this is also the part that seems to have the most controversy surrounding it, but let's break down what's said here and why it's in my opinion another example of bad writing. Mostly, it's the choice of examples used on her end as a way to express to Bruce what she goes through and how that justifies her grip on her emotions. When claiming she has no trouble controlling her anger, she states it's due to her dealings of being catcalled and having incompetent men explain her area of expertise to her. In no way am I trying to demean the level of annoyance, frustration, and disgust that must come along with catcalling at times. I genuinely acknowledge that that's something I can't relate to and have no proper perspective on. But what I do feel confident in saying is I have no clue why that was the example given in this context. As the writer, you must be aware of what we've seen and heard Bruce go through up to this point. In the first Avengers, for example, he details a story of how he attempted to take his own life by firing a gun in his mouth, only to have the Hulk spit out the bullet. Can you imagine how much that must fuck with someone's psyche? To feel that low, to get to that point, and not even be able to succeed because of a part of you that's entirely out of your control. The emotional roller coaster that had to have followed after that, let alone whatever actions and feelings led to that attempt on his life in the first place, takes the emotional side of things to an incredibly different and much deeper space. Now, I'm not saying this version of Jen hasn't been through anything like that. Perhaps she has. But that's kind of my point. We don't know. Instead, all I have to try and sympathize with her is getting hit on by some sleazy assholes and dealing with some more assholes at work. And I get it. Maybe she's not aware of everything Bruce has gone through. But how about instead of shoving it in the guy who's been living a good chunk of his life with this situation's face, you at least try to level with him? As a writer, this is kind of one of your ideal times to shine by showcasing a moment that's not only relatable, but makes the audience feel for what they're going through. A moment in the character's life that allows them to open up to us in a way that allows us to appreciate their point of view more. And I'm sorry, but I just don't believe that the examples presented in the episode were the best examples to give the audience that feeling. It doesn't have to be something as dark as a suicide attempt, but there's plenty of ground to work with between that and dealing with incompetent men at work. Whether you want to believe it or not, we all deal with incompetent men at work, Jen. My final critique that I hope the show works out is the pacing. I don't mind the fast forward button being hit every now and again, so to speak, if it's for the sake of speeding up a moment or cluster of moments that don't need additional fleshing out. But this whole episode has the pedal to the metal and never once bothers to stop and check any of the wreckage left behind it. Any bit of emotional connection that could have been had gets abruptly cut by humor that misses more than it lands, or simply jumps to another scene. The majority of the time spent with Bruce attempting to train Jen is glossed over and gives us a hard time to gain appreciation or connection of the trials and tribulations she must be going through. And by the time she leaves him, it doesn't feel like much of any progress has been made. She's definitely heard Bruce at this point, but it'd be tough to say she gets what he meant. It reminded me of when someone delivers a half-assed apology just so they don't have to continue the conversation anymore, but you know damn well they're not really sorry. Now, it seems she does have a bit of a bond with Bruce, but that's exactly how it seemed prior to all this going down. There doesn't appear to be a stronger connection between them or deeper understanding of the dilemma she's faced with. She's just cool with disregarding him and all his logic to rush back to her life as a lawyer, and rushed it sure does feel. Putting the final nail in the coffin for me on this point is the final scene of the episode where Titania bursts into the courtroom Jen is having a trial in, and she hulks out to take the baddie out in one swift punch. Sounds cool, you may think. Well, it might have been if there was even the slightest bit of context given. We have no clue why Titania broke into the courtroom in the first place. Could be explained in a future episode, so I'll reserve full judgment, but it's also difficult to get behind Jen's heroic deed here, as the writer clearly forgot what they had just introduced earlier in the show. Jen begins the episode announcing she has no intentions of hulking out in public, as she doesn't desire the attention that would come along with it. Yet, with absolutely no hesitation, she turns green in the courtroom to save the day. Once again, the pacing is horrible here, and it's like they're trying to make you have a hard time to give a shit about the character development. You know what simple switch could have fixed this? Instead of having her worry about ripping a cute suit she loves, how about she refuses to assist until innocent lives get dragged into the mess? Have Titania start to threaten and attack some civilians, forcing Jen to put her own feelings to the side and realize with great power comes great hulking out. Then have her transform and take down the random villain with ease, giving her a sense of satisfaction and fulfillment as she's responsible for saving multiple lives, even if it meant altering the public image of her own. Being able to provide a simple solution to a glaring issue in the writing like this makes me beyond disappointed in either the lack of care or lack of actually trying to make a genuinely gripping story. Look, hindsight's 20/20, and critiquing an already made piece of work is completely different from making your own from scratch. So I want to give the benefit of the doubt, but only time will tell if that benefit of the doubt was deserved. All I can do for now is repeat how I still hope this beginning episode isn't a full representation of what's to come. I hope the next episode comes out and I feel the need to shut the fuck up, as I can't wait to see where this could possibly be going next. Won't have to wait long. By the time this video is finished and released, we'll have episode 2 to talk about. So long as it's worth talking about. Alright, well that's it. Rant over. Points made. Let me know if you agree or not in the comments, like the video if you enjoyed this content, and hit that subscribe button. Oh, and the notification bell next to it. Also, can you tell every person you've ever met about this and maybe recommend it to your buddies online? Awesome. Thanks. You're the best. Okay, bye.